Welcome to Secrets for an Inspirational Life with Mimi Novic, the place where every heart tells its story. Whether it's inspiration, courage or hope you need, you've come to the right place. Sit back and enjoy the journey with us. Subscribe below to be sure you don't miss future episodes.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Secrets for an Inspirational Life. How are you all today? I hope that there are some wonderful times ahead for all of us, and I certainly hope that you in some way are following that inner calling, that inner light, something that is propelling you, that will take you on a journey that you were meant to walk upon on this earth, because this is the time. I really do feel like that each one of us that is here on this earth has a particular mission, a particular road, and a particular destiny. And destiny, as I always say, is a really tricky subject because I personally believe in that concept of destiny, and that a higher power, God, whatever you would like to feel connected to in that way, has a plan for us. And somehow, when we arrive onto this earth, we are given that book, even before, I think, of what is going to happen. How much we have an influence over that, I don't know. And that's the beauty of life, is that we keep trying. And whatever our heart is telling us, whatever our heart is whispering to us, if we follow it, we can never, ever be lost. Now, I am absolutely delighted to welcome my guest today, who is Shaun Grant. Born and raised in the heart of New Orleans, Shaun's early life was shaped by adversity, from street violence to the devastation of Hurricane Katrina. But instead of breaking him, all these awakened a deep and very, very moving resilience within him. Shaun is a life mastery coach, a fitness expert, law of attraction practitioner, and actor, blending his creativity with consciousness in all that he does. His entertainment career has seen him appear in major films and shows, earn a Best Actor nomination, and launch his own production company, Uplifter Entertainment. He is also the creator of the Vibrational Actor, a unique method bridging performance and energy work. Beyond the screen, Shaun's fitness career has taken him to national television, including appearances on National Geographic and Inside Edition, as well as training high-profile clients and producing wellness programs that have reached audiences worldwide. Today, he shares his journey. Welcome, dear Shaun.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I
Oh,
appreciate you and your platform and all that you're doing to inspire and empower people. So really, really happy to be here with you.
how wonderful. What a beautiful thing to say, Shaun. And I have to say, I am absolutely delighted that you have joined me here today. And especially because you are such a bright light amongst all this darkness in the world that is.
Mhm.
And it needs people such as yourself. So, the pleasure is all mine.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Oh, now, I was talking to Shaun earlier, I have to say, for the people listening out there, and he does so much. I don't know if there's anything that he can't do, because there's so much that he does, and me trying to get everything It was absolutely impossible. And in the end, I just sat down and I thought, oh my goodness, what am I supposed to do here?
Yeah.
So
You're like, this guy's giving me a headache.
yeah, what am I supposed to say? So I thought, look, I'm going to just sort of encapsulate it a little bit, and then
Mhm.
I will let you, Shaun, tell us all about this fantastic life and what you have achieved, what you're yearning to achieve. Because really, it's something that struck me about Shaun is that his energy was fantastic. And it's something that really feels inspiring. And I know that for all you listeners out there, you know how much I love that is that each one of us has this story that lives within us and is just waiting to be told. So, Shaun,
Mhm.
let us start. Let's go back. I know you don't do a lot of things and you're going to share all that with us,
Mhm.
but where did it all begin?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I know it's a
So,
big question. And I
yeah.
nearly forgot.
Yeah.
Where are you at the moment? Because I love to hear where my guests are.
I, at the moment, am living in beautiful Tampa, Florida, in the United States. I've been
Wow.
here for a couple of years.
Hmm.
Previously, I was in the Fort Lauderdale, Miami area. And then before that, in Los Angeles. And where it actually began is New Orleans, Louisiana. Um, and that really is it's basically the origin of my story, and it's shaped me in ways that I could have never imagined, but also really has helped define who I am and what my motivations, purpose, and passions are as I conduct my life on a daily basis. Growing up, as you touched on a bit in the bio initially, there was a lot of adversity, a lot of fear, a lot of hardship. It seemed as if it was never ending, and that created a lot of internal struggle for me. So I initially in life began to honestly fear everything.
Mm.
I really found myself being afraid of life in general. And a lot of that had to do with my environment and just the amount of desperation and hopelessness that was relayed from generation to generation. Now, it wasn't all bad, but most of it from my, you know, inner child perspective really felt like, oh my gosh, I'm living in a war zone. How does this ever get any better? And I can remember asking myself that question, how does this ever get any better? And that really it really um, piqued my interest as to, okay, how can I make my own life better? And, that really started me getting into um, a space of finding things that I really enjoyed, but that really resonated with my heart. And now I couldn't articulate that at the time, but looking back on it, I know now whatever my heart called to is what I found myself drawn to. And eventually it was just about being creatively expressive in whatever way spirit decided to bring about. And I was the one area in my life that I wasn't fearful was in the realm of creativity. And if I would get a feeling of doing something, I would just go for it. And unless I was obstructed by some adult, some guardian figure or authority figure, I just went for it. And I feel like after almost 44 years now that it just hadn't changed.
Now, I want to go back to what you said
Hmm.
is one of the things is that you lived in fear.
Hmm.
And this can happen a lot in life as children. We can all live in this situation where you wonder what really life is about because you're young at that time.
Yes.
You're trying to find your way in the world. You're trying to make sense in the world. And
Hmm.
I don't know whether you could answer this for me, because I often think when children grow up in difficult circumstances and in not circumstances, I suppose, that are easy for them to prosper,
Hmm.
sometimes you think, how on earth can you get out of it? I remember as a child, and I've spoken about this before, I went to a particular school. I grew up in a village, and then I
Hmm.
went into a school that was in the town, and I was really bullied.
Hmm.
And I don't say this to be sort of, you know, um, on some pedestal that I am. No, not at all. But
Hmm.
me coming from a village in England to going
Hmm.
into a town, a school, it was very, very difficult. And I wondered,
Hmm.
am I ever going to get out of here? Because
Right.
it was so difficult and I was tormented while I was there.
Hmm.
And I look back now and I think, was this, the hand of God? Was this destiny? What was
Hmm.
it that sort of lifted me from that school? Because I was taken out of the school by my parents because I just couldn't handle it. But what if they hadn't done that? What would my chances have been to achieve anything, to get out of that fear? It
Hmm.
must take an incredible amount of bravery. But
Hmm.
also, what if the circumstances just don't allow it? Do you think it's something by the divine grace that takes you out of a situation like that? Do you think it's luck? What do you believe it is?
Well, that is a terrific question, and thank you for sharing that story because it's very similar to mine. And I 100% in my experience believe that it is the divine grace of God to start that gives us the idea, right?
Mm,
Um the inspiration that really helps us to start to think that things can be different. Now, when you are younger, a lot of times you're just taking in what the adults around you are giving you. So
mm,
it doesn't necessarily change right away. But once again, hindsight is everything. When I look back, I really do recall, in doing, things like past life retrieval and stuff like that. I do really recall as a child, um, once I found something that I really, really loved and enjoyed, and for me, that was, American football. I absolutely just loved it in so many ways, and it ticked all of my boxes. Right, I just had such a fun, joyous time participating in it that at that moment when that was born into my life, when that was sort of introduced by the divine, I knew there, okay, this is my outlet that can, get me out of the situation that I'm in, the circumstances that I'm experiencing. And I think like, a lot of times God will plant seeds in your life for you to find, and the way you find them is by how you feel and how they resonate with you. And when you're just naturally, instinctively drawn to something, it can expand to the point where it not only inspires, uplifts, and empowers and expands your life, but it has the capacity to do that to everybody you come into contact with. And that's what American football did for me, as well as from there with the performing and the other creative aspects. But I once again, I think God's grace, and then us being able to answer the call when the seeds are planted, or rather, when we discover the seeds that are planted by the divine essence.
that's very profound. And I believe that. I
Mm-hmm.
truly believe that when something is right for us, you just know it instinctively. There is
Yes.
a river that suddenly flows. It's an energy that begins to allow you to move so easily.
Hmm.
And although maybe the path is difficult at times,
Hmm.
that feeling propels you to follow a certain direction. Somehow you're just being taken along. And all you
Mm.
have to do, I feel, is surrender to that.
Yes, absolutely. And it's almost magical to think when you do find that outlet, that expression, that purpose, if you will, or calling. It's magical how things do unfold to support you throughout the process of that divine expansion for the thing you're drawn to. And like I said, I can look back on my life and just see that in so many different ways. And it's just like, it's a head scratcher because you're like, wow, I would have never thought that would have worked out like that. But it has, and it did, and it continues to do so. And it's really powerful. It's really powerful when you can see the evidence of that working in your life.
And what do you think, Shaun,
Mhm.
was the major point that actually turned your life around so that your life was, in effect, led by hope as
Mhm.
opposed to fear?
Yeah, that's another very, very wonderful question. Um, if I had to say the one thing that really, I think seeing so much hopelessness around me, and so I'm actually an intuitive. I'm actually a psychic, and I just rediscovered those abilities. And but I had them when I was a child, so it was a very, very empathic experience to feel fear in the souls and the spirits of the people around me. And it was very, very debilitating in a lot of ways. And you could feel the difference between, I can remember when we would go on vacation and I would experience the energy of people being so happy and so full of joy and excitement. And then we would come back home and it almost felt like I kind of want to say death because to me, psychically, death feels like no more energy, stagnant, um, immovable in a sense. There's no mobility, so to say, and I felt that all around me. I felt it in a very deep capacity, and I told myself I was like, I have to have something better. It was too much to experience what everyone else had settled for. And I didn't even know how that was going to happen, but I knew from a heart centered standpoint that I wanted something better, not just for myself, but just for my entire family as well.
You talk about being psychic, and
Hmm.
I know it's a subject that,
Hmm.
even though people, some people don't want to admit, but I know
Hmm.
that everybody is intrigued. As soon as you
Hmm.
say psychic, people's ears
Yeah.
prick up, don't they? And
Yeah.
ooh, ooh, you suddenly become very interesting.
Right. Right.
um, and I want to ask you about that because it's
Hmm.
something I feel that um, every single person on the planet, I
Hmm.
actually do believe that they are psychic.
Yes.
It's whether one has the courage
Hmm.
to hear that inner voice that you
Hmm.
spoke about earlier,
Hmm.
or to actually suppress that voice.
Hmm.
And I think what we're seeing collectively now is that if we don't listen to that inner voice,
Hmm.
if we don't obey the dictates of our heart and soul, we suddenly become a complete mayhem and
Yes.
we can't live in any way, we begin to just exist. Nothing makes sense. Everything
Hmm.
becomes a, a storm, a maelstrom of complete chaos.
Right.
But if we can admit it, firstly, one has to admit it. And
Hmm.
it's a big jump for people to do that, um, to admit that you have that power.
Hmm.
And that power is not given just so easily that you can use it. You have to be able to sort of maneuver that power so that it is aligned for good.
Yes. Hmm.
Because if it,
Absolutely.
you know, if it's not aligned for good, that again causes devastation for people, for
Hmm.
those around them. So it's a huge thing for you to say,
Hmm.
actually, I'm psychic, because
Hmm.
that's a big responsibility.
Yes. Yeah.
And
It
how did you
is.
find the courage is what I want to know.
Oh, wow.
Tell
Well,
us
let
the
me tell you.
story.
So I am deeply into spiritual growth, and I feel like a big part of my life, um, my purpose in life is to, dive into that as much as I can. And so what I discovered, so I have core wounds, soul core wounds of abandonment and of shame. And anything that would ever make me feel in some way abandoned or shameful, I suppressed it. And I suppressed it to the magnitude of, literally just burying it as deep as I could within myself. And, before I was able to really start being conscious of doing that, I I denied a lot of what I was feeling. I would, like, I mentioned before, I would pick up on energy and pick up on things and hear people's thoughts and finish their sentences and all these empathic intuitive capabilities. But because I grew up in what we call the Bible Belt in southeastern Louisiana, or just the southern United States, according to religion, psychics are of the devil. And so when it was revealed to me that I was psychic, I was empathic, I was intuitive, I can remember, oh my gosh, there's no way at all that I am going to embrace this because, one, I don't want to be associated with the quote unquote devil. And two, I don't want to be rejected. I don't want to be shamed. And I don't want to be abandoned um, by being kicked out of the church if I do allow anybody to see or know that I have these abilities. And so I suppressed them for over 30 years. And I would say, because they just came back, I just rediscovered and they reemerged in the last few months. And it was while I was really diving into, but also processing and learning to love and accept, and then ultimately forgive and let go the abandonment wound and the shame wound. And so I can remember all these feelings were coming up, and I got so sick, and it was just the worst type of sickness. It was almost, once again, kind of like that dying sensation. And I was just like, oh my goodness, I just kill me now. I don't want to experience this. That's how much of a feeling it was creating within me along those lines. And then I got past it, and the next day was completely calm and peaceful. And then the next day came, and I had to go through it again. And it was worse the second time around. And I don't even know how I made it through. But once I made it through, everything from a psychic standpoint just started to come up, and it just started to emerge in a massive capacity. And then it started to help me to realize how I had denied myself one of the biggest parts of myself for most of my life. and that's why it felt like death, because I had really killed that aspect of myself from fear of being rejected, abandoned, and shamed. And when it reemerged, immediately I knew intuitively that it had to be something that wasn't about me and how I looked, but it was about me being able to use this God-given gift to help and to empower people. And so I just went right into using it in any way that I could to help as many people as I could. And I think the difference now is when you take the attention off of yourself. It's still tough because people, as you mentioned, people get like a bit nervous. They think
Yeah.
that I'm like reading their minds and all this stuff. And I was like, just wait, hold on a second. I was like, I'm a psychic, not a fortune teller. Okay. It's like, just, just you can relax. But when you get past the idea of having the you focus and being self-conscious about it, you can actually allow the gift to open up, and it can be a tremendous help to so many people who are looking for clarity, looking for a greater self-awareness and answers within themselves. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to use it in that regard now. So it's been a journey, but I'm super grateful to be able to embrace it like I never have before.
And it's something that you've only just rediscovered, is it?
Yes. Yeah. So literally a few months ago. And
You're in
it was
kindergarten, are you, at the moment?
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
in the psychic
Um,
kindergarten. And how's that
yeah.
how's that going for you?
It's actually pretty good because I threw myself out there, and I just started doing these, what I call these psychic picture readings.
Mm-hmm.
And what I noticed is I think it's called psychography, where I can look at a picture and pick up um,
Mm-hmm.
intuitive wisdom from people's image. And I started doing this, and it really started to impact the lives of the people that I was conducting the reading for. And so that really felt good for me because that's all I've ever really wanted, was to use what God has given me, whether it's through wisdom, whether it's through experience, even struggle and hardship, and then find a way to empower somebody else through that experience. And so this was just another gift from the spirit that allowed me to be able to participate in doing that. And it's been really fulfilling in a lot of ways to just be able to make life a little bit more clearer, or help people to understand themselves and their lives in a greater way.
So this is something that you knew that you had this special
Hmm.
gift as a child, but
Yeah.
it's something that you managed to master in the sense of you mastered how to hide it very well.
Yes. Yes.
Hmm.
And much like I always say, the universe, loves us so much to the point that it wants us to be as authentic to ourselves as possible. So literally, I would say every day of my life, that gift tried to reemerge itself, and I suppressed it every time it would come back up. I can
Give me an
remember.
example. Give me an
Oh,
example
well,
as a child, because this I know people are going to be people tell me off sometimes. Why didn't you ask that? Why didn't you ask that? And now I'm sort of learning
yeah.
what people want me to ask as well as what I want to
Hmm.
ask. Firstly, I'd like to ask you, Shaun, how did
Yeah.
you know that you were psychic as a
Hmm.
child?
Hmm.
What were the signs?
Hmm.
And we know why you suppressed it.
Yeah.
So you've explained that. And
Hmm.
how did you manage um, to suppress it for so long? And then what caused it to sort of reemerge so dramatically that it actually changed your life?
Yeah. So I think I noticed it as a child. So my two strongest attributes of psychic ability are clairsentience, which is clear seeing for anybody that's unfamiliar, and clairaudience. And My clairvoyance is starting to emerge a lot as well, but those two, clairaudience and clairsentience, and I would always hear people's deepest thoughts, and I just never really thought anything of it. But then I could tell how their energy would change if they understood what it was, if they understood or knew that I knew what they were thinking. And it didn't happen all the time, but it was whenever I was really relaxed or dialed in some way, shape, or form. The funny thing is if I really, really try to use it, it obstructs it. But if I'm calm, relaxed, and open and just receptive, things will just kind of come in and download themselves. I call them divine downloads. And I also, one of the most pivotal points, turning points for me was I would go into different places and the energy was either very light, very welcoming, and just full of life, or would be the coldest, desolate, most lifeless experience ever. And I would feel that in these different places. And I knew it was something different because I would ask, I was like, do y'all feel that? Like I would ask my brothers and my mom, and she's like, feel what? They didn't really pick up on it like I was picking up on it. And I can remember watching on television, because they would have these psychic hotlines and stuff like that. And everybody always took it as nothing really serious. But then I had the revelation when I was watching one, the revelation came through that, you are psychic. And then that's when I was like, oh God, no, I can't be psychic. All these sermons I've heard about me going to hell or being associated with the devil is like, I can't do that. So I stopped listening to those voices. I stopped taking heed to those energetic inferences and expressions of the environment. And as you're likely aware of, when you stop listening to your intuition, you stop listening to what I call a divine gift, you begin to lose it. And so a lot of confusion begins to birth itself. And that's completely what happened with my life, because although I felt like I knew what I wanted to do, in a lot of ways, I was very confused. I was very unsure of myself. I lacked confidence. And I believe all of that comes when you finally discover who you are in the most authentic, sincere, and genuine capacity. But when you're on the opposite spectrum of that, you lose it. And I used to find myself, whenever I decided to suppress that, I find myself trying to imitate, impersonate. And I think this is probably why I got into acting in a lot of ways. I would impersonate and try to take other people's lives um, and build it as my own, but it always created confusion. And I feel like the universe was always trying to show me, it's like, look, you got to get back to yourself. You got to get back to yourself. But I was so fearful. I lacked so much confidence, and I was so afraid of being abandoned that I just couldn't do it. And it was that suppression that, almost led me to suicide when I was 22 years old. And, not to get too far off, but I always say, people think suicide happens one time, but suicide is actually killing yourself mentally, emotionally, and spiritually every day until it begins to until it manifests itself in the physical realm. And in looking back on that experience, that definitely, me suppressing once again the biggest part of myself, or one of the biggest parts of myself, was conducive to me almost taking my own life. And it was just a cry for help, I feel, in a lot of ways, looking back on it.
Thank you for sharing that so honestly.
Absolutely.
And it's a remarkable story up until now
Hmm.
because it just shows you that what you have just revealed, Shaun, is
Hmm.
actually what's going on with the world. That
Yes.
slowly everybody is dying,
Hmm.
and whoever is born eventually dies.
Yep.
But it's that journey in between the
Hmm.
first breath and the last breath that counts.
Yep.
And I do believe that if we don't follow that yearning, because it is a yearning, it's a yearning of the soul,
Hmm.
that we are actually destroying ourselves in every moment of our life.
Hmm.
And when you look outside, and I'm very much a people watcher, partly because of my job, but also because
Yeah.
it's something, that I always am curious. I look at someone, I imagine their life, I think, what is your life? And in that moment, you're taken um, to that person's life because I think we are definitely able to connect with hearts on a much
Hmm.
subtle level than we are ever with words. So
Right.
when you want to listen to someone or when you want to truly hear what they have to say, you have
Hmm.
to engage the heart. You can't
Yes.
just engage the ears because you don't hear
Hmm.
anything. And if I was to engage with your heart,
Hmm.
it creates a certain vulnerability in me because what it's
Hmm.
actually doing, it's making me open my heart. So
Hmm.
I think this abandonment that you speak about, I think
Hmm.
we all have that as human beings,
Yes.
is the fear of abandonment. Some a little more, some a little less. But in any case, it's that deep abandonment that we feel, whether it be from parents,
Yeah.
siblings, society, friends. But ultimately, I believe that it comes from being abandoned from the source
Yes.
and from the divine. Because if you are so disconnected that you don't feel that you are part of a greater plan, of
Hmm.
a greater love, that in itself is a life of total abandonment.
Hmm. Absolutely. I love that. I love how you just articulated that.
And your bravery to speak about such a thing has to be really, it's awe inspiring because to come out and to say this,
Hmm.
you have climbed such a mountain within yourself to be able to say that. Because to be able to say it is to have lived it.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
It's, really thank you. And I have to ask you,
Hmm.
what happened? How did you become so brave to admit that you have this gift? Because in admitting it, you will not only change the lives of others ultimately, but your
Hmm.
life can't ever be the same. And those that are closest to you, how did you
Right.
find the courage to do that?
Yeah. I feel my life of an overriding theme has been compassion. And to be a compassionate person in a lot of ways, you really have to go through the drudgery and the muck of life. And it's those experiences where I felt the most rejected, the most alone, um, abandoned, hopeless, in that time of, getting ready to end my life. After God gave me the grace to be able to overcome it, it was instantly and intuitively from my heart, I knew that this was something that could help people. And I wasn't initially read. I didn't have the courage initially because I was still sort of caught up in being approved, not wanting to be looked at a certain way. But then, you reach a point where you see so many individuals struggle with so much, and internally and empathically, you've gone through the same thing. And there was a scripture I used to read all the time that would always stick with me. It says you can lighten someone's burden with the truth. And I always thought to myself, I'm like, okay, I could do that, but I just didn't have the strength. And when my spiritual growth took me down the path of releasing all of these harmful past emotions, I began to see that my ability to speak up, my ability to speak out, my ability to not only connect with source, but use that connection with source to connect with other people began to get stronger and stronger. And then the really big turning point was when I really understood that I am God and God is me. It let the veil sort of be let down and allowed me to just be completely open and expressive with the most authentic version. And I always taught that, but it took me a while to really get to that point. And I always ask myself, who is the most authentic version of me? And it's the individual that has gone through hell and back and then gone to hell a few more times and came
Yes.
back again and then went back for some more, for just healing my own stuff. And it just builds this love, this oneness, this unconditional um divine love that radiates from you and wants you to share these things. And I always knew that it would help, if anything, help people feel a little bit better about their own lives. Um, but it all changed when I was able to start, as you mentioned, um, sharing these stories and not really caring if I looked a bit different to somebody. And it's actually been the opposite. Like everybody I've shared it with has felt so much better about their own situation by me sharing it because, we all grow together when we're vulnerable and we allow our curtains to sort of be open to the truth that, yeah, we have struggles. Yeah, we go through things. Yeah, life isn't always sunshine and rainbows, but it doesn't mean that we lose who we truly are as far as infinite, unlimited, immortal, divine beings. And it makes you look at your humanity a whole lot different in the sense of a whole lot more compassionate and a whole lot more loving.
It does, doesn't it? Because
Mm-hmm.
when you go through something as traumatic, as deep, as life changing as you have,
Mm-hmm.
you look at the world in a completely different way.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about you, Shaun, but when one goes through deeply transformational things and a lot of suffering,
Yeah.
you actually become more compassionate because you look at people very differently and you
Mm-hmm.
think to yourself, I always think to myself, I actually don't know. Maybe they've gone through something and
Mm-hmm.
they are just trying to cope. And this
Mm-hmm.
is the only way that they can do it.
Yeah.
And I know this is going to sound such a strange story, and
Mm-hmm.
it's about a crow.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to share this with you
Okay.
because I believe that it's not just human beings. I believe that creation in general, whether that be animals or birds or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is all searching for love. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not just me being romantic, although I am very, but I fundamentally believe that we are love.
Yeah.
And anything that comes in between us and love is wrong for us. So
Right.
that's why. heart-led, as you said. And I remember once I'd hurt my ankle
Mm-hmm.
and I was going to the osteopath and I couldn't drive and I'd got into the taxi and I was in so much pain.
Mm-hmm.
And I got into the taxi just about and I saw this crow. And it
Mm-hmm.
was quite a big crow. And I thought it was a raven, but it wasn't. It was just a big crow. And it
Mm-hmm.
was eating something. It had found this creature. I don't know what it was. And it was pulling and it was hopping and it was tugging on this thing. I remember looking at it because we were in the traffic and thinking, oh gosh, how how awful. I'm so glad that God didn't create me to be a crow.
Yeah.
And in that moment, would you believe, Shaun, the crow turned around and looked at me and gave me such a look. And I felt this crow. And I will never forget this in my life. And
Mm-hmm.
it gave me this look of despair in a way, but also of acceptance that, look, I am a crow. This is what I've been created to be. This is part of who I am. And I accept
Mm.
myself. What about you?
Wow.
And I tell you what, Shaun, I had this epiphany moment,
Yeah.
and I've never been keen on them, but now I have quite a
Mm-hmm.
liking for them because I understood something that it is in the acceptance of who we are in all this frailty of being human, in all this that we are and that we aren't, is actually this beautiful essence.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So I get it. I totally get what you're saying that um, your ability to be psychic,
Mm-hmm.
your acceptance of it
Mm-hmm.
is actually illuminating not only the path for you, but
Mm-hmm.
for every single person that you meet from now until the end of your life.
Mm. That's amazing.
I'm just really, I suppose, in awe that you've been able to share this story and
Mm-hmm.
truly thank you because it's incredible. It's incredible to hear, to feel such bravery
Mm-hmm.
and to really show people that there is hope no matter what you are going through. There is
Yeah.
always hope, isn't there?
It is. There is. It's um when we're naturally inclined to return to source, to return to God, it allows us to almost close the door to our problems, to our struggles, to the things that we all go through as human beings. But when we're able to reconnect to God, reconnect to the Spirit of God, it just things just get better. Things and they don't even necessarily change on the outside, but internally. And I found this in my own life. I always come to a space where I said, you know what? I can be at complete peace and acceptance of what is. And I know this too shall pass. And in some way, shape, or form, as horrible as it is, or as it seems, it's making me stronger. It's making me be able to show up even greater in my own life. And it's really amazing. It's really amazing how um those shifts can take place when you sort of move from that level of hopelessness to um tapping back into your eternal infiniteness that is the God within each of us.
What a beautiful line. Your
Mhm.
eternal infiniteness. That in itself is so beautiful.
Thank
and
you.
actually describes everything about everything,
Hmm.
because that is the thread that runs through everything. And
Yes.
I know that people out there will say, yes, but I can't connect to God, or I can't connect to the source, or I don't believe in this and I don't believe in that. And I
Hmm.
would say, and I'm curious what you would say, but
Hmm.
I would say, well, the beginning is yourself. Connect to
Yes.
yourself, because unless you connect to yourself,
Hmm.
unless we connect to ourselves, unless we actually believe in ourselves,
Hmm.
we are complete unbelievers in everything.
Right. So right. So true.
So, how can we believe in something that people think of as outside of us? It's absolutely impossible
Yeah.
until you believe what's inside of you.
Hmm.
What are
Hmm.
your thoughts on that?
Um, that was beautiful, by the way. Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So I believe, or I have faith that, and this is to touch on what you said earlier, love is the starting point, because ultimately the universe is expressing love in every single act and in every single creation in existence. And if we start with loving ourselves, the path to God is a lot easier. I I can remember growing up in church and not ever really feeling a connection to God. And then one day my heart moved and I just burst out into tears, and it was completely unexpected. I had been praying. I was like, Lord, I just want to connect to you. I want to hear more of your inner voice in my ear, more of your inner voice in my heart. And I was just saying that prayer over and over. And I was in church, and it was the most uninspiring sermon being given. And I burst out into tears because I had finally connected with the Spirit of God, internally. And I just remember that moment in time because how I got there started with me loving myself enough to be able to love and acknowledge that God is real. And that created an experience that was undoubtedly the proof, so to speak. And I feel like if you have a desire to know God, to know, the true essence of God and the all that is, that's a beautiful place to start, because that desire in itself is going to lead you to loving yourself. And as you love yourself more, because we're all made in the image and likeness of God and we are expressions of God, loving yourself is loving God, which will then open up an avenue, a gateway to where you can consciously begin to experience God within you, which is the God of everything. And love is the catalyst, love is the key, I feel.
Beautiful. It's an alchemy.
Mm-hmm.
And in a world that is so desperate, in a world that feels somehow so full and yet
Mm-hmm.
so empty, and people that are desperate, we will
Mm-hmm.
get desperate moments.
Yeah.
It's time to turn inwards,
Yes.
because the answer isn't out there. We've
Mm-hmm.
tried that,
Yeah.
as human beings, we've
Mm-hmm.
tried to find answers out there,
Yeah.
but we're yet to search for the answers inside.
Mm-hmm.
So if we've tried it and it hasn't worked,
Mm-hmm.
then stop doing it.
Yeah.
And it's never going to work.
Right.
So, you know, there is that famous saying, isn't it, of trying to do something the same. You know that saying, and
Yeah, it's
expecting it to be
insanity.
different. Yeah, absolutely. So um, stop doing it. And I say that to myself, Shaun. I say,
Yeah.
Mimi, stop doing that. You've done that. It doesn't work.
Hmm.
Well, it might work. No, it won't work. And
Yeah.
you know it won't work. But you know, we have to play games with ourselves.
Oh
We have
yeah.
to bang ourselves against the wall a few times and
Yeah.
sit there and hold our head and then realize
Yeah.
this actually isn't working. Um, let's
Yeah.
try something different. So try something different. Stop looking out there. Stop
Yeah.
looking at all these other places, at all these other people that say they have
Hmm.
answers. Um, it hasn't worked. Try
Yeah.
something different. Try saying to yourself, actually, what do I need? We all know what we
Yeah.
need.
Yeah.
Um, like you turned inwards.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
turned inwards.
Hmm.
Um, uh, but I think we need to try it. I think we need to try something different and have the courage to do that.
Yes. I absolutely, and I love that you bring this up because one of the most fulfilling things is to speak from an experience of having done so much in the third dimensional aspect of life and looking to find fulfillment in those things and actually experiencing those things and realizing that for a fleeting moment, you're excited, you're fulfilled, you're happy. And then all of a sudden, you can be completely empty accomplishing a goal you had set that took you 10 years to get to. Um, I say that because I feel like my objective, my divine objective now, is to help people not to have to go through that, right? Not to have to feel like if you just got famous, your lack of unworthiness would be all of a sudden healed and you can move on. It would actually make it worse if you do become famous and you feel unworthy within, because once it's taken away, the unworthiness is expanded. Um, the idea with money, it's funny because the third dimension represents all emotional, mental, and spiritual blocks within us. And until we clear those, we're unable to feel whole and complete. And the only journey to whole, completeness and fulfillment is by going within. And you just have to continue to do it. Because I think we're more like children than we lead on. But I can remember I would go within and go within and I'd make progress and I'd love what I was experiencing. And then I'd turn around and go back to doing the other stuff. And then, the universe would have to lead me back to going within, going within, going within. And every single time it was always going within until I finally realized, okay, this is actually what I really want. Everything else is there for me to enjoy, for me to be grateful for, and to experience in this life. But the true essence of the fulfillment of who I really am and for everybody else is my connection, my embodiment, and my relationship to the divine source that is God. And that's the solution to everything.
That is the solution.
Mm-hmm.
That's the truth. But
Mm-hmm.
in order to reach that point of understanding,
Mm-hmm.
it's a long road.
Yeah.
It's a long road, and
Yeah.
everyone is obsessed. You bring up money,
Mm-hmm.
which I just want to touch upon because everybody wants to be rich,
Mm-hmm.
it seems.
Mm-hmm.
And they're always spending millions that they haven't got in their mind
Right.
if they won the lottery. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
now I would do this and I would do this and I would do this and I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
do that. And everywhere you look, Shaun,
Mm-hmm.
it's buy this, buy that, buy this, buy that, sell this, sell that, buy this.
Yes.
And about a month ago, I had a complete overload of that. And I suddenly thought, what on earth is going on? Everywhere
Yeah.
you look, whether it be online or in advertisements going down the road, it's
Yep.
buy, 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 buy.
Yep.
Or the new tilt on it now is sell, 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 which ultimately is the same thing
Right. Right.
going round. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking, well, how much can you actually have? And
Hmm.
how much do you actually need?
Yeah.
I've been to some really sort of far-flung places, and
Hmm.
I've seen some really dire things, how people live. And
Right.
I would come home and I would kiss the bathroom, the walls
Yeah.
of the bathroom, and
I
and
know.
and I would say, that feeling, thank you, thank you,
Yep.
bathroom, um,
Yep.
thank you,
Yep.
toilet, thank you, hot
Yes.
water. Um,
Yeah.
and you know what I'm getting at, and
Hmm.
hug the bed. Let's hug the bed, um,
Yep.
because that actually we don't need a lot.
Yeah.
Um, just I always think it's hot water, food,
Hmm.
shelter, a little bit of butter and jam,
Yeah.
a little bit of sprinkle of fairy dust,
Hmm.
um, because you could have millions
Hmm.
and you can be so miserable.
Yeah.
And yet, some of the poorest people that I have met have been some of the most fantastic people.
Yeah.
And I've had the best time with them.
Hmm.
So somewhere we've lost the plot. Somewhere I
Hmm.
think we've as society, it's all gone a bit haywire.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not saying we don't need money, because
Hmm.
obviously we do in this world, but
Right.
our relationship with money is something that has become, well, you tell me what it's become, because you're also an expert, aren't you, in this?
Yes. Yes. So
We've
it's
gone all the way
interesting.
round.
Yeah. It's interesting because what I teach is that money is a direct reflection of our own energy. And if we take a look at how we behave with money, we can actually see the depths of our very being, our consciousness around that thing. And what has happened is as wonderful as money is when you have a healthy relationship with it, it can be the ultimate thing that disconnects you from that embodiment and connection of source that we just talked about. And the problem comes in when people try to use money, consumerism, um, selling in things to fulfill themselves when what they really need is to love, heal, process, and forgive the emotion that's causing that behavior. And I think there's just a lack of emotional intelligence and spiritual growth that's causing people to basically spend money they don't have, um, and inundate themselves in these things and not really think for a second, wait a minute, why am I exuding this type of behavior? Why do I why do I need this so badly? Because if you really stop to take a moment and ask that question with anything, you're going to find some type of emotion, whether it's from the past or recently, that's driving it. And once you can become aware of that, it can sort of free you up. And I you mentioned how visiting certain places in the world can help you to really get a better understanding of what it means to truly be happy.
Hmm.
Um, I think a lot of people need to have that experience because you don't need as much as you think you do um, when it comes to money. You only need to be more self-aware and more connected to the truth of who you really are from a divine perspective to find that joy. And the interesting thing about that is, in my experience, when you find that and you connect to that, you tend to have more than enough money in your life to do the things that you really care about, to take care of the people that you really care about. And it's really transformative and eye-opening in so many ways because money ultimately is meant to be a resource and a tool, but not something to bring us happiness like we're looking for it to do so in just the influx of all the consumerism and buying and everything that's going on. So I really think we have to take a moment to really see what our emotions are around it and what beliefs we have that drive the behavior that's taking place.
It's such an interesting subject, Shaun, because
Mm-hmm.
um, I'm going to bring this subject up actually very fleetingly because I want people to look at your work, and
Mm-hmm.
if they find it resonates, of course, I want them to be interested in that and to research about what you do, because I think it's something that's really important to address in
Mm-hmm.
a lot of lives, and especially now where fundamentally a lot of relationships are based around money,
Yep.
and people actually value people only by how much they have and how much they can use somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a sad state of affairs, really. And I know a couple of people who are in relationships who are purely actually being used for their financial status. And they're not millionaires or
Mm-hmm.
anything like that. They're just
Mm-hmm.
normal people working, but they are being used purely
Mm-hmm.
for their money.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no love in those relationships, but
Yep.
it seems like it's an absolutely accepted form of
Mm-hmm.
behavior. And
Yeah.
I'm still flabbergasted by it. I think, how on earth did we
Yeah.
get here?
Yeah. Yeah. What you just mentioned in a lot of ways, because I've had a lot of money stuff to go through growing up um, on the opposite side of wealth in a lot of ways. And it gets back to the emotion, right? And I think the emotion that needs to be processed is when you're in a situation when you marry somebody for money, you're marrying somebody for safety. You're saying that money is my safety, which is from a universal standpoint, is going to blow up in your face every single time because we can't allow anything outside of us to fulfill us. And that's a big point that's missed. And I think people get into relationships because maybe as children they hadn't had the safety that they feel like money can bring. So they go to the extreme and marry somebody who does have money, but then the person is a absolutely just terrible uh, when it comes to morals and ethics and just being a good person altogether. But it's always that emotion, that deep seated emotion that's going to drive the behavior. And a lot of times, if not all the time, it's unconscious. And so, but the thing is, if you don't take care of it, you can really ruin your life. And we've seen so many people do so.
It's very, very interesting. And
Hmm.
I know you've given some talks, haven't you, about this?
Yes. Yep.
And where can people find that information that you talk about, Shaun?
So online, if you don't live in my city, I've got a plethora of YouTube videos. My YouTube handle is sgrant28. And I've got a total of 80 plus videos, live videos on the concept of money, um, in the sense of my primary objective is healing money trauma, helping people to heal their money trauma and to build a better relationship with money so they can be at peace, they can experience joy and full acceptance with where they are, with also being open to expanding in that capacity with
Mm.
um, their financial lives. And so that can be found on YouTube, Instagram. I post a lot of content about that on Instagram. The list goes on.
But you
TikTok,
do other things, don't you? You do
yeah,
money.
articles,
What
yeah.
else do you? What else do you do for people out there to know, Shaun? Where can they contact you? What other things do you offer?
hmm So you can contact me on any one of my social medias. So Instagram is IAMSHAUNGRANT. I am Shaun Grant. My TikTok is THEUPLIFTER 504, the Uplifter 504. And if you are interested in any type of spiritual counseling, working, possible reading, you can contact me through email at shaung04 at gmail.com. And I will get back to you as soon as I can. But those are usually the most direct ways to get in contact with me. Um, yeah, to see if there's any way I can help you and help you to live your best life and be the happiest that you can be.
Amazing.
Mhm.
Absolutely amazing. And I want to mention that you have also authored a few books, haven't you?
Yes, yes. So I have written a total of 8 books. I have 4 on Amazon that I am extraordinarily proud of. Um, so you can find these books on Amazon in print or Kindle. The first one is called "The Universe Loves You," and it's a work that I co-wrote with my wife, and it basically answers the idea that you have to decide whether you live in a friendly, loving universe or the opposite. And this book shows you how the universe is friendly, loving, and supportive. And it's by far one of my favorite books that I've written, as well as the second book that I will reveal to you, and that's called The Money Cure: Healing Your Relationship to Abundance in All Things Money, and that's on Amazon as well, in print and in Kindle. And this is really a deep dive into the psychic aspect of money, the spiritual, mental, and emotional side of it, and it really enables us to clear those things that stops money from coming in, but coming in a healthy way. And it really opens the reader up to new ways of seeing why they have the experience with money that they do, and ultimately leading them to live a life of true abundance.
I think it's fascinating that you address all of these things. It's
Hmm
not many people do. Many
Yeah.
people either focus on spirituality or on the
hmm
physical side of life, but
hmm
very rarely, I think, people try to encompass all of it. But seeing as
hmm
we're human beings on this planet,
Yeah.
it's useful to be able to know all the things that affect us on the physical plane,
hmm
in order to be able to be sort of free from the chains of that,
Yeah.
and to be able to master it, so to speak.
hmm
So thank you for that. So for everybody out there, and
Absolutely.
I will put some links in on the episode as well, so people can have
Perfect.
um, a little look at all the things that you do. What can I say? I am so grateful to you, Shaun. It's been absolutely endearing and fascinating and fantastic to talk to you today.
Oh, thank you so much. The feeling is mutual. Thank you for allowing us to just be open and being able to authentically express ourselves and use that to really allow anybody that's going to be listening to this to transform or change their lives in a positive way. So thank you so much.
And thank you so much. And give my regards to Florida. It's a very beautiful place that I visited many moons ago. And
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And it's something that's really quite lovely about it. And the people are so friendly.
Yes. Yeah. It's a beautiful place. It's very, very grateful that I was able to land here and being here now. And from an energy standpoint, it feels
Yeah,
completely like home. So I'm super stoked about being here at this time in my life.
beautiful, beautiful. Thank you again, Shaun. Do come back again and
Yes.
share what you've been up to and what you've been doing and your psychic journey, of course, because I'm sure
Hmm.
everybody will be interested in that.
Yes.
And I wish you all the very best always.
Thank you so much. Same to you as well.
Thank you, Shaun. Look after yourself.
Will do. Thank
All
you.
right, then. Take care.
You too. Bye
Okay.
bye.
Bye bye. Bye. Shaun Grant. Absolutely remarkable story. And what a privilege for us to share these profound moments. And really, we are honoured, all of us, to have this time together. Thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate it. And I think it's beautiful that we can connect in this way. Until next time, enjoy the small moments and do something that brings you peace and love. Take care and lots of love.
Thank you for listening to Secrets for an Inspirational Life, brought to you by your host, Mimi Novic. Please remember to subscribe to the podcast and see you in the next episode. For more information about Mimi Novic and her books, music, and inspirational work, take a look at her website, www.miminovic.co.uk.